Hi everyone, welcome back to our ongoing series on how to create a life operating system in Notion. And today we're going to look at time blocking, specifically how to work between the action zone or the daily task planner in the Notion PPV system, or really any Notion system, and Google Calendar or Microsoft Outlook or any calendar app that's really better suited for event planning, especially when you have automation such as Calendly or other scheduling apps, bringing in calendar invites, lining up scheduled events, which we cannot yet do in Notion. Hopefully one day soon, we'll have the API, and the API will enable us to sync our Google or Outlook calendars with Notion, and then the two will be beautifully synced and everything will be perfect. But until that happens, we have to manage our scheduled events that are coming in through automatic calendar invites and our Notion system with a little bit of manual sync. And so that's what I'm going to focus on today. And specifically, we're going to look at how to do true full-on time blocking, where you really block out your day, where you have the very highest probability of success at implementing your day as you've planned it, because you're planning it with the most specific precision you possibly can. And you have real clarity on what you're setting out to do on each given day. So this is the full-on time blocking approach to making things happen in your life day by day. Sometimes I'll do a looser system than the time blocking system. That's what I showed you in the previous video. But sometimes I have a tough deadline and I need to get a lot done without fail on all the days leading up to it. Or I'm a little bit unhappy with myself. I haven't been fulfilling my commitment to myself and doing what I've been telling myself I'm going to do. I was distracted too easily. I got off path too many times, too many days in a row. So I'll force myself to go into a more structured approach until I get the system in place where I can reliably do what I'm committing to myself and what I'm committing to my Notion schedule. However, it's not just about working every minute of the day. You will schedule into the day fun time, family time, meals, breaks, and then you'll schedule in your work time. I typically, when I go into the full-on time blocking mode, I'll do this Monday through Friday. I don't typically do this on the weekend unless I have a really intense deadline coming up. But if you do this for a while, it puts you into a rhythm, into a discipline that then eventually you can come off of it and go to a little bit looser schedule like the one I showed in the last video, where you're planning your day but not mapping out every minute of the day. So let's dive right in and look at how we can work between Notion planning and the Google Calendar or any calendar app, and then how to do time blocking in a calendar app informed by your Notion Action Zone system. Okay, so starting in the command center, jumping into the Action Zone, which is our daily focus area. We'll typically work within the Today toggle and we'll have our priorities lined up. In the last video, we looked at how we took the remaining tasks for the current day and applied them to the next day and sorted out the rest of the week based on what's viable during tomorrow's schedule and what are the top priorities for getting done tomorrow. So we laid this out. So again, it'd be really helpful if you saw the previous video, which I'll link to below, before following through here, because this is a setup we established in the previous video. So having laid out the day, now we want to double check, since it's the night before, make sure there aren't any scheduled tasks that were added since our weekly review, when we would have added the whole week's scheduled events from the calendars. So we will toggle over to the calendar, hitting Command Tab on the keyboard. We'll toggle between different apps. You can toggle back and forth between Notion and your calendar. I use Google Calendar. Any calendar application will work basically the same way. In Google Calendar, looking at tomorrow, we've got one scheduled task. That's what we've already got scheduled here. Looking at for the week, we've got these specific scheduled events, not tasks, but actual events at a specific time. And it's good to bring those into your Notion calendar. Again, once the API comes out, that should be automated. But for now, we got to do it manually. Or you can not put any scheduled tasks in the Notion planner and just know that you have to toggle between the two to look for any scheduled events. I like to bring them over because I don't typically have that many that it's too much of a burden. If you had a day filled with scheduled events, then what I would do is I would do the time blocking approach as your normal matter of routine, and then use the calendar app as your primary way to look at what's happening throughout the day. I'll talk more about how to bring the Notion items into the calendar in a moment. Now, I find it's helpful to have defined for yourself an ideal day, and that's what I have listed here currently in the today spot. Today is the 1st. And this is the ideal day mapped out. And I'll typically roll this forward. Any specific events will stay, but the routine, regular stuff, the habits and routines, and the parts of my day that are consistent, I'll just roll forward. So we've got the current day that we are just finishing up. It's late in the day. And so we've got our scheduled events up here. Now, I'm going to be looking at what we have in terms of priorities and quick actions in our Notion system that we have defined very clearly right here. They're in order: immediates, quick items that take 2, 3, less than 5 minutes, knock them out of the way, Scheduled items are all piled up together so that we see them in the Notion view. Now, if you're only relying on scheduling in the calendar app, then you'll look at the scheduling here. But most importantly, we have our first, second, third, up through fourth or fifth priorities, all lined up such that these are doable. They may be a reach, but it is a viable to-do list for the day. If you execute well, you can get it all done. Don't beat yourself up if you don't. By going for it and reaching for something that's achievable, you'll get more done than you would have otherwise, even if you don't get the last few done. Then errands and reminders that could be done at any time of the day. But we really want to make sure that the important things get done. So if this confirmed bill payment is sort of a quick little item, but I made it immediate because I wanted to make sure it was done the first moment when I sat down at the desk, because it's just really important and urgent. And then a more casual quick item. And then we've got these 3 priorities for the day. So the key is we've got a regular routine. This calendar plan and this ideal day is also informed by our habits and routines. A few videos ago, I did a whole video on how to plan out your habits and routines. Check out that video for more detail, but those habits and routines are built into this ideal day. We have workout, stretch, and shower. The workout's part of the habits and routines. Meditate. We have a startup routine, which bundles several habits and routines that are defined in that bundle in that video I did a few days ago in the habits and routines database. So check that out. So as it's the night before the next day, we're going to take each of these and slide them forward. These are the ones I do every day unless there's something scheduled that's blocking it. So I'll just move those forward. We don't need to keep the history here of all these old items. What matters is what we're going to do in the new day. We know that we had this workout. We know that we had it doesn't matter that we have a track record of all of our meditations and startup routines and email checks. The things we want to track, we're tracking in the daily tracking database, which is also covered in a previous video. It's a Notion database that tracks the things that matter in a format that matters more than just a marking on a calendar. So we're moving forward all the things that are normal habits and routines during hours that don't have anything scheduled. So we'll even come down here to the ones that are not scheduled. We'll move these forward. The time periods for all these tomorrow is wide open. So I'm going to move my normal routines. Now, some of my routines are to keep blocked off large stretches of uninterrupted time for deep work. That's the time in which we're going to do our priorities from our Notion system. We'll get to that in just a moment. So now everything's moved over except that this one time slot has a scheduled event in it. If the event were toward the beginning or end, we could shorten this and just slide it in here underneath. But since we do have time to get started on this, I'm just going to move this up here. Slide it down, and most calendars can work this in. I'm going to make this the whole deep work time. For me, it's content creation. I block off this entire window for content creation typically, but for you, this could be any deep work. So we'll just call this deep work morning. So this is a deep work session, then we have the afternoon deep work 1 and afternoon deep work 2. But I've got my scheduled event here, but I've got this area here blocked off for long uninterrupted deep work. Obviously, in this case of Tuesday, there will be an interruption, but I can get started. If I need to prep for that meeting, then again, I would shorten this, make the morning deep work session start after the scheduled event, and just put in a little prep here. And in Google Calendar, you can color any of these by right-clicking and picking the color you want. So you can color coordinate blocks of them so that they're more easily interpreted at a glance. So I've got a meeting prep, I've got the actual meeting, and then I get back to my deep work session. And that's how we do it. Now we've got the whole day time blocked. So the habits and routines are built into our daily ideal day and are just built in here. Down here we have reading time. That's one of my habits and routines. It's scheduled in the day, and each day, unless there's an event scheduled for that time, it just slides forward into the next slot. Fun break, breaking up the 2 deep work sessions, we'll just slide forward unless there's something. But there is something, so that won't slide forward. Before we look at rolling forward the following day, let me just emphasize. Now, remember back on the Notion plan, we had some quick items in the morning and sometimes an immediate urgent item. Those will typically be done in my schedule in the quick items. I have a half-hour scheduled here every morning to knock out any quick items I have scheduled here. If I don't have any, I'll just move on to the next thing on the schedule. But typically I'll have a few quick items and I have a half hour every morning to just knock those out and remove them from my to-do list. And again, immediate means it's really urgent. You can't wait until you're after your startup routine. So once you sit down for the startup routine, if you've got an immediate, you might do it right away. If it can wait until after the startup routine, then you'll do it immediately after. But whatever needs to make room for an immediate will make room. And if that has to come out of your deep work session, then so be it. Everything rolls forward to accommodate an immediate urgent item. So you typically try not to have those, but if you have them, you have a way of accommodating for them in the schedule. Again, the quick items are all going to go into the quick item entry point. And if you don't, then you'll get a head start on the rest of it. And then when you get to your first, second, third, and so forth priorities, that's what these long uninterrupted deep work sessions are for. The morning deep work, the afternoon 1 or 2 deep works with some break in between. You can do 2 hours with just a simple 5-minute walking break on the hour, but don't go 4 hours or even 3 hours without standing up from your desk and taking a bit of a break. Let your mind reset, refresh, don't grind yourself into the ground. And really every 40 to 60 minutes, you should be standing up for at least 5 minutes and just walking around, get a glass of water, stretch your legs. It's unhealthy to sit at a desk for hour after hour after hour without any stretching or movement. But most importantly, we're blocking off uninterrupted time to get our biggest priorities of the day, which are defined as first, second, third priority. You'll get them done. You have 2 choices here. You can either set your objective as work first priority is done in this time block, second is done in the second time block, and third is done in the third deep work time block, and set the expectation for yourself that when that time is over, you're done with the first priority. When the second deep work time block is finished, you cut yourself off, and that will force you to get done quicker. If you feel there's uninterrupted time for as long as it takes, oftentimes time will fill the amount of time it's given. And if you give it endless time, it'll take endless time, or at least a very long time. So one strategy is to have a hard end on each item. And if you don't finish it, then you'll roll it forward. But it'll put more pressure on you to finish it. The other approach is to say, I have these 3 long uninterrupted stretches of work. I'm going to work through first priority until it's done. And then I'm going to start second priority and work through until it's done. And then I'll start third priority. You'll have less discipline at holding yourself and forcing yourself to finish, but some items require that. Let's be realistic. There's always this advice to cap the end time, and that's generally good advice, but some projects just require the time that they take and they're hard to predict. You can choose, depending on the task, which approach to take. But if possible, give yourself a hard end time and force yourself to get it done in that time. Generally, I think that's the better approach, but you have 2 ways of doing it depending on the nature of the task that you're prioritizing. And that's it. That's how you lay out today. But notice we've got a lunch break in here. We've got email checks in here. We've got breaks in here. We've got a reading period, got fun time. We've got some relaxing time at the end, evening wind down, sleep at a reasonable hour, get up early, or whatever schedule you want to work on. Define it specifically with clear intention so that you're not just meandering reactively through life. You're clearly setting out what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you're going to do it, and that's how you make things happen. So then after this, we're going into the next day. Again, we'll just roll forward our normal habits and routines that are just a matter of course when there aren't any scheduled events blocking that time period. And you'll learn to try to schedule your scheduled events in times that are conducive for this. For example, you might try to put them only at the end or only at the beginning of existing deep work periods, or perhaps try to replace your fun break, or perhaps try to replace your reading hour. You'll know the best time to interrupt because you have a clear schedule of what each hour of the day represents in your schedule, and therefore you'll better be able to schedule meetings that fit your schedule in a way that makes them the least intrusive. You might also try to have all your meetings on certain days, maybe only Tuesdays and Thursdays, or maybe only Fridays, or maybe only Mondays. Try to get all your meetings in those days so there are fewer days trying to work around interruptions. Now, this next day does not have this scheduled task here, so we don't have to worry about that, but it does have a scheduled task down here. So we're going to work around it. Our deep work is going to slide up to its normal time, and it's going to go down to the end of the time available. However, we now see we have a performance review scheduled during our lunch break. So we have to decide whether we want to do our lunch before or after. We might decide that we want to do it before, in which case we'll just move lunch in there, or alternately, we'll put lunch down here and we'll keep this going. If lunch is down there, we move this down. Now we've got a delayed lunch and a delayed series of scheduled activities as a matter of routine. And so we've got a tiny slot here, but a little bit of time to move in this deep work session here. But you want to make it fit. Then we got our fun break. So maybe our fun break comes in after that. And then this comes in here. Or maybe we'll decide that there is no time for a fun break and we'll get rid of it. Up to you. And everything else comes across because there's nothing in that time slot interfering. And then that day's scheduled. And then we'll do it finally the next day. Again, the evening before we're planning the next day. So we're checking our priorities and our quick items and any event that's listed in our Notion action zone. And then we're coming over here again. And it's so much easier than starting from scratch every day by having this ideal day already defined. Now this day is wide open, so we're going to go back to our standard ideal day. Slide that over. Everything moves over to its place. And those things that had accommodated scheduled tasks on the prior day will no longer be an issue, so we can get back to our normal routine. Lunch can come in here. That email check can go in there. Our deep work session is back to where it belongs. How was that? Fun break can come back there. Let's come back here. And so forth. And so we move it back to where everything belongs. And you can tweak this endlessly as you go. Your ideal day can always be optimized. It's a flexible, adaptable thing. Nothing's ever fixed. Anything is legitimate and anything is fair game as long as it's deliberate and intentional and not reactive and ad hoc. There we go. It takes a couple minutes. You have your whole day planned the next day with great clarity. Now when you sit down at your desk, you just execute. You're there executing on your day as planned, getting things done, stopping yourself at the end time, moving on to the next thing with long, uninterrupted stretches of deep work. If you have 3 uninterrupted stretches of deep work every day to execute on the priorities that you're planning, most of which are coordinated with your projects. Inside your projects, you're planning out all the tasks you need to do. These are sample pages, so they don't have a lot of tasks fleshed out, but you have all the tasks fleshed out. Some are active, some are next up, some are future. Other videos have walked through how to plan tasks from a project database view, but you're lining them up, and then when that day comes, they roll into the day, and then the evening before, you're planning them with the priorities here, and then you're time blocking them here so that everything has a place, everything has a time saved for it to execute. The key thing is most people go through life having scheduled events that they make because they have obligations to other people, but they never do the things that they've committed to themselves. They prioritize obligations to other people over commitments they make to themselves, so they never get their personal stuff done. They never move their life forward with the big actions that will advance the projects that will change their life. The little things that you're reacting to, serving other people's priority schedules, often need to get done, but they don't advance your life. They don't change the equation in your life. You need to make sure that the projects you're planning and the tasks associated with them that you're prioritizing get scheduled on the calendar just as specifically and rigidly as the events you're planning to meet with and do things for other people. You need to block out time on your calendar. And you might even plan this out for a whole week and say, I'm going to do deep work on this day for these hours. Sunday, you might plan that out. I'm going to save this time. And then I'm going to save another time here. Maybe you'll save this time. Pick some times and block them out at the outset. Work your meetings around them. Prioritize your time for your projects that are going to advance your priorities in life, and save them and preserve them on the calendar as you would any important meeting with anybody else. And what we're doing with this daily ideal schedule, we're doing a version of that. In this case, we were working around existing scheduled events, but just as you can have scheduled events for and with other people, you can have scheduled events for and by and with yourself for your highest priorities. And I tend to just block those off as deep work sessions. And then I will apply whatever priorities coming up that day to that deep work session. And that's how I advance my life toward the things that matter most to me. That's how I get projects done. And getting projects done is how I get my goals done. So I hope that's helpful. This is going to be even better once we get that API and we can have our calendar apps syncing with our Notion apps It's a little bit frustrating to have this manual bridge, but it really doesn't take that much time. You should be scheduling the next day, the evening before anyway. It is by far the most effective way to make things happen consistently throughout your week and your days and your hours. And since you're taking that time anyway, you might as well just sync the two calendars. And if you're going to take it to the level of time blocking and make sure you get things done, I find this is an incredibly effective way to do it. In the next video, I'm going to show how we can actually bring a Google Calendar into your Notion dashboard so you can see them on the same dashboard page. That can be helpful to some people. And also show how you can integrate a few other very clever and useful widgets that can inform your dashboard. And then my current video schedule has the following video after that to be the long-awaited mindset video. The mindset and then identity sculpting will be in a video that follows shortly after that. I apologize for how long that one's taken. It's coming together. That's going to happen in the next few videos. And that's really going to tee up a longer series of discussions we're going to have on mindset and identity sculpting, but these ones will specifically focus on the Notion build and implementation to help you execute on those. If this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos. Leave thoughts or questions below, or join us at my new online community for a broader conversation. That's at yearzero.io, and hit like if you found this video valuable. I also write a newsletter called Mind and Machine on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work super hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is below in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Lots more to come.